Hello everyone, welcome once again. In the previous session we talked about there are various methods to develop the potential solutions, and we discussed various potential solutions. In this session we'll focus on one of the very common and usual ways of generating potential solutions, which are called as standardization and benchmarking. If you can see on my screen, we're talking about the core principle behind standardization, what it is. As it says, nothing happens on a reliable, sustained basis unless we build a system to cause it to happen on a reliable, sustained basis. Standardization is what allows high quality to happen on a reliable, sustained basis. Now if you go back to the previous line, it says nothing happens on a reliable, sustained basis unless we build a system. So if we are expecting people to do a job in the same manner every day, it will not happen. Unless we build a system in such a way that they all follow the same method, they all follow the same language, they write the email in the same way, they speak to the customer in the same language. You would have noticed that whenever we speak to a credit card company or a customer care executive from anything, from a bank or from we are calling a customer care executive to repair our fridge, AC or TV, when they pick up the call, they speak in the same language, they ask the same questions, their answers are also very same. When they put you on hold, they speak the same language, and there are kind of resolution they give, the language and process remains absolutely same. Now these guys are not doing anything on their own, and if the company is expecting them to actually follow a standard method, and or let's say if the company wanted them to understand that all my customer care executive should not take more than 4 to 5 minutes to do the job, then this expectation is wrong unless they have set or designed a system that allows them to work in the similar fashion. So standardization is something that we need to build. We can't expect it to happen unless we have built in the process. So if you are moving, let's move to the next slide, where we're talking about standardization makes sure that important elements of a process are performed consistently in the best possible way. Changes are made only when data shows that an alternative is better. So when the process is repeating every single day, we can't make any changes. We make changes only when we feel that an exception is required, or a process can be done in a better way. And in the standardization, the most important part is a documentation. If there are 10 people working on a process, they all need to have a document that tells them how to do this job. So documentation is the key, and the document will be same for all the 10 guys, because documentation makes sure that it is up to date and it is used, and it should be used. So we can use these standardized methods that we have built in the team. And if you find anyone who is not using it, then we use another method called feedback. So documentation and feedback and evolution of the document is very important. It needs to be kept up to date whenever changes are there. What are the benefits of it? Standardization can help us to compete more successfully in the marketplace by providing increased reliability, reduced cost, improved employee performance, increased safety, processes that remain in control, continuous improvement, flexible practices that allows for quick response to customer needs. So if you move to the next slide, we need to understand, while we are talking about standardization is key, standardization is a good practice for generating solutions, but what's important is how much detailing we should be doing while we are working on a standardized process. So if in this slide you will see 3 levels of detailing that we are looking at. One is a high level detail, one is some detail needed, one is very detailed level. High level is like we're talking about at a very overview level. Some detail is some specific information, while very detailed is something which is very, very detailed, like even the transactions, specific words and everything. So high level, for example, get up. You need to get up. Some detail is get out of the bed. Very detailed level is swing left foot to floor on left side of the bed. That's the standardization. And a very detailed level is swing left foot to floor on the left side of the bed. So you would have seen that when we get up every morning and clean our teeth, what do? Every day more or less we follow a very common, very standardized way of doing it. We get up, We get out of the bed, we go to a specific place. For some it is a common wash basin, or they go to their bathrooms. They go to one place every day. They know where the toothbrush is, they know where the toothpaste is, so it's the same thing they do every day. They pick it up, clean it, put some toothpaste on it, and they take more or less the same amount of time, the same amount of brushing the teeth every single day. Nothing changes in this routine every single day. Does it happen? No. When does the routine change? When routine changes is when somebody is already in the bathroom and you are not able to access it. Then maybe you have to go to another bathroom, or maybe you have to wait for it. Or maybe when you are not at your home, then you go somewhere else, then the routine might change or the process might change. But otherwise, unless required, nothing changes in that process. That's how standardized things become. Now, if the best part about standardization is you don't have to think about it. It is in your subconscious mind when you start doing it. So that is what organization want to do it. They want this practice of doing something become so natural. It comes in subconscious mind. You don't have to think twice on it. It should just happen. So what kind of detailing is required while we are putting together a document, that can also be discussed. You want it to be at a high level, you want it to be at certain level, you want it to be very detailed, the way we are looking at the screen here. Now that was about something about the brainstorming, the standardization. If we just quickly look at a process of standardization, how do we actually standardize something? It's a very quick process that you can see on the screen. Document the work context of the procedure, then collect the documents that represent the procedure, compare the documented procedure with the actual procedure, reconcile actual practice with the documented procedure. So here we are trying to find the gap between what we have written and the way things are happening, and we try to bridge the gap. And then we plan to use the documented standard procedure with the team, use the standard procedure, and finally check on the use of the standard procedures. And then we check, then we see, is it happening in the same manner, is there a gap, how do we give the feedback. So that's how it happens in terms of a standard work practice. That's how we try to standardize a process. Moving from a standardization, we look at another method of generating potential solution, which is called as benchmarking. So if you see my screen, we have written there are typically 4 types of benchmarking practices. One is called as strategic benchmarking, another one is called as competitive benchmarking, another one is process benchmarking, and the last one is functional benchmarking. Let's have a quick look at all of them. A strategic benchmarking is used to improve overall performance by examining the long-term strategies and approaches that have enabled great performers to succeed. So here we are trying to understand, for example, a car company comes to India. Now you all are aware that Kia Motors and MG Motors, they came to India 3 years back, and they all wanted to establish their presence in a very competitive marketplace where you have Maruti Suzuki, you have Mahindra, you have Ford, you have Renault. And these car makers are already established car makers like Hyundai or Honda as well. So they have to compete with already established car maker, and they have to leave their footmarks and also gain their own fan following. So they, in terms of strategic benchmarking, they will so their long-term vision and strategy will be very much based on what other car companies are doing in India. They will not like to do something which is very different than all others are doing, unless and until it really matches the expectation of the Indian customers. So here we're talking about the strategic level vision and the priorities, which should actually, and we're trying to benchmark it with what others have. For example, making a cost-effective car, for example, making a car which is cheaper but it has a lot of features, just like Maruti is doing with a lot of its entry-level cars. So same thing what these companies also may be trying to do. But they are trying to match their strategy and priorities with the car makers which are already established. What it involves? It involves considering core competencies, developing new products and services, changing the balance of activities, and improving capabilities for dealing with changes in the background environment. The other type of benchmarking, which is called competitive benchmarking, is used when organizations consider their position in relation to performance characteristics of vital products and services. Benchmarking partners are drawn from the same segment. So let's say we have companies competing each other in the same industry: auto industry, pharmaceutical industry, consumer goods industry. So when they are into the same industry, then you benchmark yourself so that you do not really go too low or too high in terms of the industry partner, and that's how we try to benchmark each other in the same industry. And then thus comes the process benchmarking, is used when the focus is on improving detailed critical process and operations. Partners are sought from best practices organizations that do similar work or deliver comparable services. Now here, the way we are delivering a service, the process that we follow, for example, banking industry works very much on benchmarking. We always say that, you know, if you take a loan from an X bank, it has a very similar process if you compare it to a Y bank. So, you know, we're trying to understand the best practices done in a bank, and we're trying to replicate some of those best practices done in another bank. So it's a process, the similar process being followed in another organization. We're trying to garner best of those processes, benchmark ourselves against those best practices happening in the similar type of environment, similar type of industry maybe. So processes we are trying to adopt that can deliver the best customer experience. And then last, we have a functional benchmarking, where we're talking about is used when an organization look to benchmark with partners with different business areas of activity in order to find ways of improving like functional work process. Now, sometimes it can also happen that I work in a bank. Now we are a bank, but we can always pick up some great manufacturing practices, the way things happen in manufacturing environment. Maybe we can pick up some great practices from there, like employee engagement. This is an activity that can be picked up from any organization, for any organization, if it suits your requirement. So here we are picking up some practices from a completely different environment and trying to adopt the best practices, and we tweak it in a way that it works for us. That's about some of the types of benchmarking. Now, moving on to other types of benchmarking, if you look at my slide, it talks about internal benchmarking and external benchmarking. Internal benchmarking is like when within the organization there are different functions, departments, they try to benchmark each other, like which is the best function in terms of the processes, documentation, morale, effectiveness, productivity, revenue wise, and so on. That's a lot of internal benchmarking that happens. And external benchmarking is that we try to compare ourselves with the best in the industry. That will ensure that our target standards are set against the best in the industry, that keeps us on our toes, and we try to compete with those best of the companies all the time. And that is how we set the targets for everyone, and that's how we set the goals also for all the employees in the organization. Our strategic vision, mission, yearly goals is based on the external benchmarking here, then called the international benchmarking. Now this is not a specific, I mean it can be covered as part of external benchmarking also. It's not very different. When a company sitting in a specific country seeks benchmarking practices from a company based in other countries. For example, in India, if I talk about the Indian car maker benchmarking itself with a British car maker, but then this cannot be very relevant because British car maker are already present in India as well. So this can be a mix of some of the benchmarking practices that we just looked at. So that's how we look at benchmarking practices, which is very common. How do we generate solutions? And then standardization is a very common way of generating these solutions. In the next session, right after this, we'll talk about Edward de Bono's 6 thinking hats, another very common and very effective method to generate these solutions. Thank you for watching. This is Shivendra Sharma here.